If I could teach the whole world one thing, it would be the power in trusting your intuition. So much gets led astray because we don't trust our inner knowing and how to access it. And that's the goal here. The Empowered Intuitive is here to bridge the gap in your spiritual knowledge, to open your mind and give you permission to decide what's best for you and the world around you. And I'm here to be real and silly and have fun while doing it. Hi. Wow. Welcome to the Empowered Intuitive Pod, formerly known as Witchy and Weird Pod. I now have a new name as well. So I was formerly known as Redacted, and then I changed my name to Redacted. All the episodes are still there with my old names and stuff. It's just, when you change your name and you're trans and you're non-binary, it's called a dead name, and we just don't call it that anymore. So my new name is Love. So maybe I'll do a whole episode on names and the power of names. But here I am. Pronouns are they, them. So today we are talking about a kind of intense topic. Something that is personal to me that I have been going through for the past few years, and not past few years, for my life. And recently have been having a lot of change and movement and growth and, the next part of the healing cycle, peeling back the layers. And originally, when I was looking at recording this new episode, I felt like, I need to do catch up what is going on, what happened, because I've been gone for such a long time. But I just don't feel really excited to do that. And that was part of the reason why I took a break from the podcast a couple years ago. Is I created, in my Mars and Virgo fashion, a system for my podcast that didn't work for myself. And I'm the one who's doing the podcast, which I'm, again, learning lessons, learning not to create more suffering and force myself into these rigid structures, because in human design, I have all 4 of my arrows as passive, so my body doesn't like structure. So I took a step away from it. I knew that it wouldn't be goodbye forever, but I just wasn't feeling passionate. I was feeling very burnt out. I was feeling like, now I have to write this content and come up with a thing. And I just created such a rigid piece in regards to the title, Witchy and Weird. I felt like it only had to be like witchy topics, bring on only witchy people and all this kind of stuff. And that's why I decided to rebrand in my hiatus to the Empowered Intuitive Pod, because I just feel like that's what we're doing. Like, that's, if I could teach every single person in the world one thing, it would be how to trust your intuition, how to use your intuition. And I feel like that's really why I'm here. That's a big piece of what I'm teaching, and my mission here in the world is to help people connect with their body, because our intuition works through our body and our senses and our feelings and our emotions, and less through our brain. And breaking down those topics with all the expertise that I have, and knowledge that I have, and gifts that I have, etc., and other people that we'll bring on. So there will still be interviews. They won't be as rigid or as strict as I had them before. Before, it was every other episode was an interview. Now it will probably be like when the interviews align, when they happen, when they feel good, because I do still have a list of people that I wanted to bring on the podcast before, and then I just stopped it. So I'm going to reach out to those people and bring them on when it feels correct. I still want to do weekly episodes, so I will try my hardest to do weekly episodes, because I am also doing another podcast. I started another podcast called Source Seers, with one of my business partners, Tylin. We host events together. We've had past lives together. We are trying to bring a really big piece into the world. I was trying to think of the right word to call it, a business, a brand, but more of like a revolution. So we talk a lot about that. We'll talk about it over at Source Seers. But yeah, I'm working on a tarot deck for a book that Tylin is writing, and we want to turn that into an app and potentially a brick and mortar location, and like a whole thing that like millions of people can access and use and enjoy. So we found our chats were just gold. So we're like, why don't we record this, and why don't we invite other people in and start teaching and bringing in all this knowledge now before all this other stuff happens. So I'm now doing weekly episodes there, so you can listen to me twice a week. That would be an amazing, that's low-key one of my goals. Like, I just want to be a podcaster. Like, I don't have to do much else. I can make my money from podcasting. That'd be sick. I still want to do readings and all that kind of stuff, but like mostly just talking about stuff is a Gemini, Venus, and Mercury's dream. So yeah, what happened? I am going to cover that. So I already kind of went into it a little bit. I just got really burnt out. I wasn't feeling it. I took a break. I'm a manifesting generator. I'm supposed to do lots of things at once, but I had too many things on my plate, and you're supposed to follow your joy if you're a generator, a manifesting generator. So I just did that. I took over 2 years off. I rebranded. I had a friend, a mentee that became a friend, who we were going to do the podcast together. We had recorded 3-4 episodes and redid the intro, redid the like branding pieces, and her life completely changed and she wasn't able to dedicate the consistent time that a podcast needs. And so I was like, hey, like, it was all chill, but I was just nervous. I was like, hey, so I just want to continue on. If you're chill with that, like, you can come on as a guest and stuff. And she was like, yeah, no big deal. I get it. We're in different places than when we started. So that's why I've been talking since July of last year saying like, hey, we're going to have new episodes if you follow us on social media. Because we recorded the first episode like 2 or 3 times. So that was like 3 weeks. And then we recorded, I want to say like 2 or 3 other episodes. So, and it wasn't like every week type of thing. So here we are. And yeah, I feel like I'm complete on that. That's pretty much all the updates. So I'm excited to be back. I'm now feeling the call and the urge to speak up. I feel like we need to be talking about these topics way more with what's going on in the world today. I feel like there is another round of people becoming awakened. I was part of those people in the 2019-2020 like COVID era that got awakened. And I feel like a lot of clients and people around me now are stepping into their intuitive, their spiritual path. That's really what I mean when I say awakened. Becoming aware of their intuition and psychic gifts and their larger path and purpose in society. So I'm really excited to share topics like that with you. So what are we talking about today? It's actually pretty heavy for me and for a lot of people. So I'm going to be vulnerable on the podcast. Hopefully I don't cry, but we'll see. I'm a Cancer. I don't care about crying. Other people are uncomfortable with crying. So I wanted to talk about navigating difficult family relationships and being a cycle breaker. Because that is something that I am in my family. I'm the cycle breaker. What is a cycle breaker? If this is your first time hearing it, a lot of these terms can be used interchangeably. So cycle breaker, trauma healer, generational trauma healer, ancestral healer, ancestral curse, ancestral gifts. Basically, when we break a cycle, we are ending a pattern that we have been in for who knows how long. It could be throughout timelines that we go through these cycles. It could be generations from our lineage, or it could just be something that we have in this lifetime that we are meant to move through. And contrary to popular belief, when we do our own healing, especially our inner child healing, we are a generational healer, because in the non-scientific genetic way, generational traumas get passed on just through our family members, right? Like let's say great grandma had a specific belief, raised your grandma with that belief, and there maybe was some trauma because, it's like, usually it's stuff like, I'll get more specific. Usually it's stuff like kind of negative. So it's like, let's say great grandma is like depression era. So it's like scarcity mindset. They raised your grandmother with this ideology, always saying like, you need to save everything. You can't throw anything away. You have to always use coupons. You can't, like things might be gone or out of stock. Excuse me. So you have this, like, you're born with it. You're born into it, mentality. You're raised with it. Then when your grandma has your mom and, is living her adult life, she instills that kind of scarcity, like, oh, be careful what you have because it might be gone. Like, hold on to everything, like, don't let it go. This fear that everything is fleeting and temporary and things could just be taken away from you, even if it's not financial scarcity. And then your mom brings that, to you when you're a kid and raises you. And then when you decide to do healing around that, you break the cycle. The other way that we can break cycles is sometimes it's not as obvious. Sometimes it's from ancestors from generations very, very far in the past that we're not consciously aware of. Sometimes it skips a few people. And then you can tell if it's that kind of cycle, if you've just always felt this way. You were just kind of born with it. You can't remember an incident that sparked that trauma or that cycle. And then we can have stuff that we just carry from different lifetimes, which is similar. We've always felt like that, and then eventually, usually, if it's like a thing for you to heal and a pattern that your soul is stuck in, your life's experiences mirror that pattern because you're meant to heal it in this lifetime. So it brings it more consciously aware to you. So you can have a bit of both in that way. We can heal ourselves and especially our inner child traumas, and it creates healing in our family lineage. And the cool thing about this is, like, when you choose to heal, it heals your entire lineage. So your non-living, your passed over ancestors, as well as your currently living family and any future family that you might have. So if you heal something in your family line, your sister benefits, your brother benefits, your mother benefits. Whoever is part of that cycle will have a shift. And I have an example in my own personal life of that. And the piece that I wanted to tie this with, we're not just talking about like generational trauma, but like difficult family members, right? So there are some traumas or generational healing or cycle breaking that maybe isn't particularly sticky in your parental relationship or your aunt or your grandpa or whatever. There could be pieces that are just for you that you're carrying. There could be maybe your mom did some healing and doesn't exhibit that, or maybe it's just not like a point of contention in your relationship. Like, I'm not really talking about those. I'm talking more about the ones where it is a little difficult. And I think, with what's going on in the world, having this resource of things that you can do and ways to move through it can be really helpful. I do want to preface it by saying I'm going to be talking a lot about my own personal experiences. I'm going to give examples of like little to like large. And I will preface it by saying I am going to be pulling from the therapy principles that I use when I do holistic therapy with people. My spiritual, like professional spiritual, intuitions from like psychically connecting to things about this, working with clients who've had similar stuff and hearing from spirit. And then I'm also just going to be talking from my personal experience. So I just want to say, like, I'm not the expert in terms of, it might not be every scenario, everything, but I want to give you examples and options and tools for you to feel empowered. I feel like we should have like a empowered and then like a sound every time I say it, like a drinking game. So you can feel empowered to choose what feels best for you. Because the thing is, with these types of difficult family relationships that are tied with breaking cycles, it can be very difficult, very hard to pull yourself out of it, to acknowledge it, to move through it, to break the cycle. It can be very emotionally heavy on multiple levels. And there can be a lot of gray area where it's really your choice. It's very situational. Some people are faced with the same exact scenarios and they are like, that's deal breaker for me. Bye, cutting you out of my life. And some people are like, you know what? I understand this is how they are and this is my boundary. This is how I deal with them, right? So each person is different. So I don't want you to think that you have to do whatever I'm saying. I don't want you to think that you have to copy whatever my personal experience is, because I want to give you permission and a reminder that you are you and only you know what is best for you. And that can change. You might find 5 years into cutting your family member out, you suddenly feel ready to have them back in your life. That is also okay. So it's very contingent on you and what you feel safe and comfortable with and what feels best. Like, what is your body? What is your inner child? What is your emotional needs in this moment with this relationship, and honoring that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I know that I'm speaking about this and saying I'm not an expert, but I think it's important to have that kind of mentality that, like, I don't necessarily know everything. Although with being psychic, I can fill in the gaps. I can just ask if I don't know, which is great. So this will be robust, but I just want to give that, kind of thing there. So let's get into it. I want to start with a minimal, in my opinion. And again, these are all my opinions, right? Like my professional plus personal mixed together opinions and thoughts. So what might feel minimal for me might be huge for you. I will insert trigger warnings if they're needed. But what I'm saying is, like, I might be like, oh, this family member and this is what happened with us. And then you're listening and you're like, what the hell? Like, that is not a minute thing. I would totally not be okay with this. Again, please have your opinions, have your thoughts. Ask yourself, ask your body, spend some time if you don't immediately know the answer. Do I resonate with this? Does this feel good to me? Is this something that I want to believe or buy into or try? So again, that's what this is all for, is it's sort of like a guide for you. So we're starting with little and working our way up to large. So the first example I want to give is, I'm just realizing, like, I was going to use family members' names, but I'm just going to use their relations. So we're not so, some of them will be obvious. I have an aunt who is notorious for being very self-centered and not being aware of it and not wanting to heal or move through those pieces. And so so this is what it's like interacting with her. We don't see each other. We're not super close, right? Like, we gather at family functions. Our family has like a history of being estranged and not talking to each other and all this stuff. And it's a big family. So at some point or another, my dad and his siblings just weren't talking for all these different reasons. So as I've gotten to have this person more in my life as an adult, rebuilding relationship with her, there have been some pretty intense moments where we see the cycle that she is stuck in. And yeah, so I want to just give this example of like how I have this boundary with this cycle, and with this person. So I'll give a few examples. When I was in college, I was hanging out with my other aunt and her family, like her children, her spouse. They invited me to Hurricane Harbor, and this aunt that we're talking about also attended. And when I got there, everyone already got there, so I was like meeting them a little bit late. And I was, taking my cover off, and my family member, it's like getting confusing with the words. So we'll say aunt for the person that I'm referring to, and then I'm going to just say family member for the rest of the people to make it simple. Complimented me on my swimsuit. And then this aunt was like standing there, didn't say anything, and then was like, oh, what about like my swimsuit? Like, don't I look nice? Like, literally asks for the compliment. Like, do you see what I'm wearing? Doesn't that look nice? Oh, I've done a lot of work on this and that. Like, so it's one of those types of scenarios where it's like, I'm a like young adult, and now I have to like so I had to be like, oh yeah, your outfit is really nice. Like, it's like, oh, thank you. It's one of those types of people where like, when you're not looking at it from a spiritual standpoint, it can be really aggravating, because we're like, why are they like this? Why are they taking up the spotlight? Why can't they let anyone else have a nice time and be happy and get their flowers and enjoy it? Why do they always have to make it about them? And there's a lot of deep, like I said, years of not talking, that like when we all started talking again, it was like, are we not going to bring this up? Are we not going to address the elephant in the room? Just like, oh, this is my favorite niece or my favorite nephew and things like that. And there's been like no building of the relationship. So a lot of like pushing past what the reality is and just wanting to be only in the good stuff. Now, if we don't look at these people as holistic beings, then it can be really limiting and really hard to move through difficult cycles. Like when you see a family member or a person in your life exhibiting those types of behaviors that you're like, what the hell? I'm so annoyed. I don't get it. They're impossible. They're not seeing. It can really be helpful, number one, in any of these cases that I'm giving you, to look at it from their perspective. Now, again, this can, depending upon the level of hurt, you might not want to look at it from their perspective if it's like something really triggering, right? Like a sexual trauma or something, or an abuse. So again, I'm telling you, like, this is your healing journey. I'm just giving examples. You choose your own adventure. So it can be really helpful to look at it from their point of view, because we are looking at the world through our point of view all the time, which is how we're designed to work. Now, when I'm since stepping into a spiritual practitioner standpoint and just how I am, it can be very helpful to see what are they struggling with, what are they going through, what is their upbringing, what are their challenges, what are their limits. And when we look at the history of my family on that side and look at how this aunt was raised, how my grandparents were, it can give a lot of grace. It can shed a new layer, a new light, a new understanding, a new depth to this family member. So when we're getting caught in like, oh my God, like, why is this person so selfish? And why can't they, understand my needs or hold space for other people, or not be difficult or change their beliefs or whatever it is that we're wanting them to do? Look at what their origin stories are. Look at what they're holding, what they're dealing with, and see, like, this is why it's important. Number one, it helps our brain, because our brain wants to make sense of it. And then when we know why are they the way that they are, it's like, oh, I can give them a little bit of grace. Now, the reason why the grace comes in is not just in the knowing. The knowing can just quell our, what the hell, like, this doesn't make any sense part of ourselves. But once we understand the history of where they come from, then we can decide, it helps decide the boundary that you want to have with them, because you're looking at them as a big picture, not just the isolated incidents and the ways that you communicate or interact with them. You're saying, well, I can see because they were raised in an environment where there was lots of children and they didn't get noticed. They didn't get to step into the spotlight. And so now their inner child is desperately seeking that love and validation and that spot, like the acknowledgement that she didn't get when she was a child. She didn't feel good about herself because she was body shamed by other family members. And she felt not as pretty because other family members were prettier than her in her perspective. These are all things that I've like talked about or heard from family members. And so once you have that understanding, you're like, oh, so she's not coming from a selfish place to take me down, to hurt me. She's coming from a place of seeking healing and trying to find that fulfillment, that void, fill the void that she has been carrying her whole entire life. And these people often, if they haven't done healing work, aren't conscious about it. So that's something else to note, is if people in your family or difficult people in your life have gone to some kind of healing, have done some kind of healing, whether that's therapy, breath work, whatever, there's no judgment on what the healing is. They might become more self-aware and more aware of their own cycles and patterns, just like how you are. And if they don't, then what happens is that wound or that pattern, which is usually an inner child wound, is pushing them out of the driver's seat in those moments when they're being triggered, when the trauma is strongest, and taking the wheel and saying, I want to drive now. I'm in charge. And that's where we can get people who just, they're like, I can't believe I acted like that. I don't know what came over me. Or like the next day after the incident happens, they're like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said that. Or like, I just stooped really low and blah, blah, blah. It's because that is the trauma part that is taking the wheel, and they're kind of not making conscious decisions because this is like a subconscious piece. This is a piece that they carry and hold with them that they might not be fully aware of. And it's taking the wheel and it's trying to fix it, trying to give them the fulfillment that they're looking for, the healing that they're looking for. They're trying desperately. But if they haven't gone to some kind of healing to learn the tools that they weren't given by their parents or their upbringing, then a lot of the time they still repeat the cycle because that wounded part that's taking the seat and driving doesn't know how. They're just trying. They're desperately trying to heal and fill that void or get whatever they need. And it might not be healthy, quote unquote. It might not be the best way to go about it. It might not result in positive outcomes because it's out of this wounded part, as opposed to new knowledge and healing blending and supporting the wounded part and becoming aware so you can make the decision and not the wounded part making the decision. So with looking at this family member, I was able to be like, oh, okay, so they never got this. They're probably not aware of this. And in my opinion, what they're doing is not that harmful. If they need a compliment every time I see them to make them feel loved and to make them feel happy, to me, right? Like I said, this is where you make your own decision. That's a simple enough request that I can do. Now, they didn't actually request that. That's me intuiting and understanding and knowing what people need. So again, you might be like, I don't want to coddle or hold space for someone. Totally your choice. But for me, it's like, I don't mind every time I see this person being like, wow, your hair looks amazing. Like, your outfit is really good. Like, I like your makeup. Like, to me, I want to tell people more that they're amazing and beautiful in their own ways. So I want to spread more love. So that's cool for me. I don't mind doing that. Now, where this really helped me was not feeling like, what the heck about this person, and it frees me from harboring some kind of belief or resentment or hurt that it's about me personally. So in seeing it from their perspective, I'm taking myself out of the equation, looking at it from like this omniscient, trying to be neutral, right? Stepping into our divine neutral. Okay, now what do I want to do with this? For me, it was like, I don't care. Like, if this person wants to take up the spotlight, honestly, I know I'm like the star of this podcast. I'm obviously using words for embellishment, but I have an 8th house moon. Like, my challenge in this life is like, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I'd rather just do the Homer Simpson meme and sink into the bushes. But I have Jupiter in my 1st house. That's like, be big, step into the spotlight. And that's why I'm here. So for me, it's like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if I'm not the center of attention. I don't care if I have to give someone else a little bit more attention to make them happy. I'm chill with that. Now, there was another incident that happened much later, more recently. I think it was like last year or the year before, where our family was visiting family in Vegas, because my dad's side of the family is here in Los Angeles and in Vegas, through the great migration of my grandmother. And we drive out there to visit the family members in Vegas. So we all drove out there, and we offered to drive this aunt. My partner and I is we, and she had planned a event, like a personal event. She was attending an event, and when we were driving on our way home, she didn't tell us ahead of time, hey, we're gonna have to leave earlier than you originally told me because I have this event. Like, is that okay with you to like do that? And she woke up on that day when we were all supposed to leave. And, you know, when you drive from California and Los Angeles to Vegas, it's like you kind of just choose when you want to go home based off your schedule. There's no rush. So we're like, yeah, we'll drive home around this time or that time. And she got up like super early, was ready, sitting down at the table, packed everything, wasn't talking to anyone, was being really weird. And we were like, we had pre-discussed we're going to go home on this time or day. And she kept saying like, oh, are we going to leave? Are we going to leave? Can we leave a little earlier? And I'm like, what is going on with this? Like, why do you keep pushing this issue? And she had said like there was an event that she was trying to make, but my partner and I forgot what the reason was, but like for some reason we didn't want to leave that early. And in the car ride, she was like asking if we could go faster and like if we could drop her off because like someone was going to pick her up so that she can make it there on time. Like all she cared about was attending her event and making her event. And there was something going on. I can't remember what it was, but there was something going on because my partner got kind of offended that she wasn't thinking about our needs and the fact that we were doing her a favor by driving her, and she didn't bring it up ahead of time to let us know and just sprung it on us and made it like our fault and became like very antsy and like just created a shitty vibe. And afterwards my partner was just like, what the hell just happened? Like, I can't believe that this person, like, she didn't even say goodbye. She just like put on her like outfit, and right when we got back and was like, okay, like the person is here to pick me up right away, goodbye, like didn't say like thanks for driving me, thanks for, you know, nothing like that. So which another lesson, you shouldn't do favors unless you want to do them out of the goodness of your heart, which is why I wasn't as bothered, because I was like, I don't need this person to say thank you to me. Like, I decided I was going to do it. It's fine. But it definitely was like a sour taste in the mouth where we were like, what? Like, is the tone deafness? Like, what is going on? And I explained to my partner, like, this is where my family member is coming from. And this is why it's hard for her to see other people's needs and like hold space for them and realize that what she's doing is low-key rude and inconsiderate. And we had both decided our new boundary after that was we're just not going to drive this person. We're just not going to offer to drive this person. Oh no, my lights changed and now the lighting is garbage. Just hold on. Bear with me. Okay, these need to go here. And then these need to go here. I have them on a timer. Oh, these are the wrong ones. Love that for me. There we go. Now the lighting is better. Okay. So yeah, like we had decided amongst ourselves, we're just going to set this boundary because that was a little bit too much for us. It was a little bit too stressful. It was a little bit too inconsiderate. We love this person. We're not going to bring it up to them because we know that they might not understand and they might not get it. And that is also another choice when you recognize the person's holistic background and where they come from and what they're capable of. It helps you understand, like, do I think this person has the emotional or mental capacity to understand if I bring this complaint or this issue or whatever it is that they're doing to the table, do I think that they will be able to receive it, to openly hear me, to understand and to be able to have that conversation to healthily move forward, and maybe even to be open to negotiating on new boundaries or new terms, right? So when we know their background, we can then be like, you know what, like in both of these examples, I didn't really talk to the other family member and say, hey, this is what I figured out, or this is what happened for me, because I personally, knowing her upbringing and her background and where she is now at this point in her life, I felt like it's just easier for me, and this is my boundary, to just make my decision and to just go by it and continue on with my life and not hold on to it or make it into a big thing, because I think if I bring it up, it probably wouldn't be received. It probably would cause more issues than it needs to, right? And again, this is your decision. These are small things in my opinion, so I don't feel like I really need to bring it up, right? We'll get to the bigger ones where it's like, I don't think I could just sit on this and swallow this or change this or etc. So, sorry, I feel like the lights are not. There we go. And then make that up. Oh, these are not. Okay. There. Oh, there we go. Of course, not coffee. So, yeah, so that's kind of why looking at it from their perspective, or just looking at what are they carrying? Do they have the ability to negotiate, to listen openly, to think about it from the other person's shoes, like I'm asking you to do right now? Do they have the ability to be rational, to listen and receive and hear other people's emotions and feelings and hold space for them? Do they have the understanding of like principles or how to like reach an agreement or to communicate healthily? Like these are all things that when you look at the other person, then you can decide, because sometimes it's a safety issue. Sometimes it's like, if I bring this up, I think that this person will fly off the handle and they've had a history of doing this. And maybe I just don't want to bring that to the table because I fear for my life and my safety. That is why I'm saying it's up to you and your choice. But for me, I decided, okay, I can see where this person is coming from. I'm not going to hold it against her, but I am going to create boundaries and understandings for myself so that I don't get upset, so I don't hold on to hurt and resentment in my body, and so that I can continue to interact with this family member in a setting that, you know, when we meet up and we're doing all the things, and still be in a space of, I love this family member and I want to talk to them or hang out with them. So that's like the first piece. And for like I said, smaller pieces, smaller, not as big of a deal, right? Because I don't see this family member all the time. It's not going to change my entire life to just do that. Now, when we're getting into like medium ones, that's where I feel like it's going to be a bit more like your choice on what you define as medium and what you're energetically open to. So once we understand and look at it from the other person's point of view, another thing that you can do is look at the history. Like, has this been brought up? Do they have this issue with other people? Like, have I tried? Like, I feel like with medium issues, it's like stuff where like maybe you've tried or it's happened multiple times. Or it's a little bit of a big deal when it comes up and we're like, I think I might want to say something, or I might want to create some kind of firm boundary here, or see if there's an opportunity for healing or change. Like, let me see like how that goes, right? And I think that it's important if we're deciding, okay, there's a medium thing here, I think I want to bring this to the table. This is where you have to look at yourself. Can I accurately communicate my feelings? Have I figured out my feelings? I'm a very emotional person in the moment, so I like to think about things, because sometimes it's hard to just be in the moment and have that conversation without causing more harm. And know when you bring these things to the table, these are therapy principles. We want to, if we're afraid of how the person is going to respond, or we don't want to have a negative response from that person, communicating with statements, they call them I statements. So we're not saying you did this and that hurt my feelings. We're saying I feel hurt because this thing that was done, or I am upset because of this thing, because of what happened. Right? So we're not blaming them, because the thing is, with bringing up conflict and having hard conversations, the ego is the biggest thing that gets in people's way. The ego is here to keep us safe. The ego is here to protect us from feeling things that we don't want to feel over and over again. And lots of people's egos get hurt when we blame them, when we place words or definitions or ideologies onto someone where they don't agree with it themselves, and they're not practiced in being able to sit outside of themselves and to listen and observe and hear it from your point of view. So if you come in hot with like, you did this and blah, 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 like that can sometimes trigger someone's ego, and they're like, oh, you're saying this thing about me, you're defining me, you're placing this belief on me, etc., etc. Then they're in a defensive state and they're not going to be willing to listen to you. So it's really important to come with these like neutral statements, these I statements, where we're not blaming and we're not defining things for other people. The other thing you can do is you can say, I feel this and this and this. Do you agree? Right? Like, I think that you said those words because you maybe are hurt about something I did in the past. Do you agree with that statement? Or do you feel differently? Correct me if I'm wrong, but da 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 da. So those are some like pieces that we can employ when we're bringing these things to the table. When we have decided we want to speak up and say something, and also think about like what it is that you are looking for. Because that can really help ground the conversation and the request and the hurt. Because the thing is, when we are hurt, when we have feelings, our feelings are just telling us something about what we need and don't want. And anger or hurt can just show us maybe there was no boundary here before because I didn't think it was needed. And now that I'm hurt, I feel like some boundary has been crossed, and that's why I'm hurt, or that's why I'm angry, is because I feel violated, right? When a boundary is crossed, it's a violation. So it's like, I feel violated in some way, shape, or form, but this has never been talked about before or brought to my attention consciously before. But now that I'm feeling this feeling, it is telling me that this is what's important and this is what's needed for me. And so that's what I need. So it's like thinking about like, what are your needs? What are you requiring from the situation? Because I think a lot of people just get caught up in needing an apology. But most of the time when people are needing or wanting an apology, what we're really wanting is for the person to show us that they understand what we've gone through and acknowledge, to see it from our perspective, right? That's really what we want, is like, do you not see how you hurt me? Do you not see how this behavior is causing an issue? I really want you to understand it from my point of view. And in an apology, if given properly, you basically acknowledge that. You say, I'm sorry for the way that I acted. It was uncalled for, yada, yada. So now you're telling the person, I understand that you are hurt and you think what I did was unfair or mean, and I am sorry for that, right? So think about like, what is the goal that you need? Because I think sometimes we can go into these conversations with family members, and if we don't have a goal, we can get just lost in all the things where we're like, oh, and another thing, this thing, while we're at it, it's bringing up this piece. Or like, you're like, I'm upset by this. And then they start talking, and then you get like caught up in your words, and you're like, why are we talking about this? Like, why did I even come here in the first place? I ended up just arguing and yelling at them, and now I feel like even worse than before, and no progress has been made. So really making sure that we have a grounded approach to what is the goal here? Before you even talk to them, before you even bring it to the table, what do I need? Because sometimes, like I said, if it's not safe to be around this family member or to communicate with this family member, or we just feel like it's not worth it energetically for our time and our energy, like we're just going to be speaking to a brick wall and they're not going to get it, it's still important for us to know what we need to move forward, to let go. Because when we're navigating difficult family relationships and breaking cycles, sometimes we don't have the privilege to heal and to break the cycle with that family member that caused it. This could be like a family member from like generations past that we don't even know their name, and we're just carrying out this cycle and we don't even know that it's attached to them. Although psychically you can find that out. I've done generational healing with people, and I do ancestral circles usually around Halloween time, but I've also done like personal ones with people in therapy, and like you can do like a specific session around that. Most of the time it needs more than one. So if you don't have the privilege to heal with that person, whether they are not living anymore, they are unwilling to hear you out, or to acknowledge, or you don't think that they're capable, or you just feel it's not safe for you, or you just feel like you don't want to interact with that person anymore because that is your boundary and that is your safety piece. Like, those are all things to consider when navigating these cycles as we're getting into the medium and heavy, where you need to know, so you need to know what you want. Do I need an apology? Do I need understanding? Do I need acceptance? Do I need love? Is my inner child needing things to have panned out differently than how they actually did in reality? Do I need safety? Do I need to have a strong boundary and just not have this person around my energy or in my life? Do I need to have only surface level interactions with them and not let them into my life anymore? So these are all outcomes that it's really important to know, what do I need from this? What is this cycle showing me? And what is the healing that is needed to break this cycle and to move through this cycle? And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, because you may have not learned the tools and the gifts and the skills. You may not know that it is inappropriate, the cycle that you're in. So an example for this in my own life, when I was in college, I started going to therapy because free therapy. I highly recommend to every single college student out there that gets free therapy. Take advantage of it. It is highly impactful, especially when you're a young adult. So I had my upbringing, I was kind of estranged from my father, and my mother was my main parent throughout my childhood. She was like mom and dad. I had a quote unquote stepdad, but he wasn't actually like a father figure. So it was mostly my mother. And in order to, and this is stuff that I learned through therapy, but I'm providing context for you. In order to survive my childhood, I very strongly attached to my mother because she represented the stability that I needed that my father didn't give me. And I really aligned my beliefs and who I was around my mother being the strong, stable, healthy parent. And then I went to therapy for working through my issues with my father and my stepfather, because those were obvious to me. And after I made progress on those, and I started talking to the therapist more about my mother and how she helped me through these things, or how I experienced these things and how she didn't help me, this therapist was like, seems like your mom is also not necessarily doing healthy stuff either, normal behaviors. And that was like the whole rug was pulled out from underneath me. I was like, hold on, I have created this very strong belief and alignment with the way that my mom is and how she does things, because it helped me feel safe and secure when people around me were not. And I really desperately needed that. And now you're telling me that this stuff is not common and not appropriate and not normal or healthy, according to like therapy, like not just like an opinion, but like, that's not good. So that was like a huge shock for me. And I was like, I don't know, like, what do I do? Like, how do I undo all of this. This is just a whole, like bag of worms or barrel of monkeys that I now have to untangle. And so I feel like once you become aware, it's important to give yourself some grace, because there can be this immediate belief of, or thought, that you're wrong and you're bad. Now that you've learned that this is wrong and bad, you are wrong and bad, because the ego, right? And you've caused harm, and I used to bully my friends because I was stuck in this trauma and in this cycle, the hurt people thing, and I didn't know any better. And once I started learning these things, it's really important to give yourself some grace. You were raised in whatever environment you were raised in, and whether that environment prepared you or gave you healthy ways of moving through the world and moving through your feelings and communicating and interacting with other people, I don't think that is yours to blame, right? It is not. You were a child, right? We learn most of these things when we're growing up, so it's important to acknowledge, I just wasn't given the right, it's like you were given the wrong textbook and then told to take, it's like you're given a math textbook and told to take a science test. You can't blame yourself. You weren't given the right textbook. How are you supposed to succeed in this science test if you have a math textbook? It's not going to give you the answers that you need. And so it's important to give yourself some grace and be like, look, I didn't know, but I am obviously making effort because I'm going to therapy, or I'm going to a sound bath, or I'm going to a breath work, or I'm doing like yoga. There's lots of things that can move trauma out of our body. I'm doing dancing, I'm reading books, I'm doing classes, I'm journaling, I'm listening to this podcast, right? So many things that can help us. And that is where you need to be, is I didn't know what I didn't know. And now that I know, I'm acknowledging that I took the effort to know, and that is what's important, that I'm trying to break out of that cycle, and I am not sitting in this cycle and being stuck in it. So I shouldn't blame myself for being in the cycle in the first place, because I didn't necessarily choose to be in the cycle. It was given to me or thrust upon me, right? So that is a big piece, to give yourself some grace, because especially with family member stuff and really emotionally charged, as we get into the medium and larger things, if we were not given the ability to blame whoever caused the harm in the first place, we look for an outlet to place that blame because we naturally want to. And we're raised to place the blame on people. Like, if you made a mistake, you say sorry, right? And so the next person in that situation is you. So people often blame themselves. They say like, like trigger warning, my stepfather sexually assaulted me and I blamed myself. I was like a young teenager, and I didn't like it. I felt icky about it after it happened, and everything in my body just felt wrong. And I was like, I can't make that mistake again. I can't put myself in that position again. I just don't want to feel that. This just felt completely wrong to me, and I'm just going to not let that happen. And so I swallowed and ate that, and I held it in, and I didn't tell anyone about it. And I wasn't able to say, this person did this thing to me. They are the person in the wrong. I was the victim in this scenario. I wasn't responsible. I'm a child, right? And you don't think about it that way when you are living through this scenario. You don't think like, I am a child. That's something I had to learn in therapy, is like, how could you have known any better? You were the child. You were the one that was supposed to be protected or taken care of. It's not your responsibility, even if you've been doing it. Even if you were the responsible one, because I had to grow up early and was thrust into an adult situation. So I would see myself when I was a kid as a child, or I would see myself when I was a kid as an adult. And so I placed that blame on myself, like I should have known better. And it's because of this betrayal just happened. So we know we can't trust that person anymore. And the only person we can trust and we feel like we can trust or depend on is ourselves. So we blame ourselves. So it's important when we're learning and when we are addressing and seeing it from the other side and learning what we need, that we don't blame ourselves. And then really thinking about, what do I need, right? So if the feelings come up, or you can talk it out, or you can journal it out, asking your body, asking your inner child, or whatever part is attached to that cycle, what do you need? Because I've done generational trauma healing for myself and for other people, where it's been something from like my great grandfather. So I don't know what was the inciting incident. I don't know what this wound needs. You can ask it. In these sessions that I do with people, we bring up that family member, even if we don't know who it is, and we ask, what do you need? And when I did the healing for myself, I just kept seeing this little Jewish boy crying, and I just asked, what do you need? And he wanted to feel like he belonged. And that was a wound that I carried and other people in my family carried. So we can ask the wound what it needs. We can ask our body. That's the big piece. We can ask our body, because our body is the one that's keeping all of this, keeps the score, keeping the history in the tabs, whether we're conscious of it or not. And ask your body what you need. Or looking at the emotions. What are my emotions telling me? If I'm sad, I'm hurt, I want to heal. Like, I want to have some kind of resolution in a way that makes me feel like I can release this hurt. Or if I'm angry, a boundary maybe was crossed and I need to create a boundary and I need to communicate that boundary. Or maybe I'm feeling misunderstood and I just want this person to understand me, right? So think about what your goal is and what you need. And again, your needs can change, right? Some people are like, I need to punch that person in the face and never talk to them again. That's where we then say, maybe we're going to heal on our own without that person. And we're going to visualize punching that person in the face while we punch a pillow or the air. And we're going to give ourselves that need in a way that is healthy and safe. So in knowing what your need is and knowing what the limitations of your family member are, then we can decide, do I want to move forward by trying to address it with that person? Or do I want to heal just with myself? And when I say with yourself, I just mean without that person or party present, but with yourself, or with yourself plus a therapist or a psychic person, like someone like me who does healing in some kind of way, your spirit guides, whoever you feel that you want to work with, maybe your friend, maybe another family member that understands, right? Like, we can heal. The beautiful thing about healing that lots of people struggle with is it doesn't need to be healed with the same person that causes the harm. But harm happens in relationship, and so does healing. So we can address and heal that relationship and that peace with ourselves and with safe persons or professional persons, or we can try and address it with that family member. So there was clearly with like my stuff with my stepdad, I didn't feel safe to tell him, to address it, to heal with him. I didn't think that he would understand or anything like that. And I did the healing with the therapist in college, and I addressed all that stuff with her, and I was able to give my inner child that healing that they needed. So I think that it's important to really drive this point home that like you will always have access to healing. Healing is always available. There's no statute of limitations. There's, 5 years have passed, so no. You can heal at any age. All you need to heal is that you just want it. And that's it. You just have to be open to the healing. We can heal by literally praying, by asking spirit to fix some stuff, to move some stuff, and they will put us in situations that will lead to the healing, introduce us to the people that will lead to the healing, give us the downloads that will lead to the healing. They will do work on your behalf on the other side, right? So there's so many different ways that we can heal, and we are not limited to just doing it one way. And we don't have to do it on our own. Many people struggle to heal on their own because if you've been brought up in like a traumatic childhood, you probably didn't get the skills to learn how to like support yourself. So it's okay to say, I don't know and I need help. Um, and so once you know those pieces, what is safe, what is my boundary, what am I needing, then you can move accordingly, and then you can begin to unravel that cycle or that wound. So I gave an example of like, I didn't want to heal with that person, and so I did it on my own. And that is, I was able to sit with my body and ask what feels best for me. And that was the boundary. I'm not going to involve this person. I'm not going to bring it up to them. I'm not going to waste my time letting them know what happened and how I felt and how it affected me. I am going to, because the nature of it was sexual trauma, take my power back, because that's what happens in those scenarios, is the power balance and dynamic gets ruined. And I took my power back through acknowledging, through saying it in spaces like this, through saying it with my partner. I had never told anyone out loud about it, through acknowledging it and working through it in therapy, right? So that is one way to go about it. And if that medium or large piece feels in that vein, then you can do that, right? Like, the thing is, it's yours to carry. It's yours that your body is already carrying. So you get to decide how you want to do it. Some other medium pieces that I feel come out often are, like, especially in today's climate, centered around like beliefs, right? Religion, politics, morals. Those can be like really big pieces for family members, for generational pieces. Like, believe it or not, those things can be generational, right? Like, let's say your family is like, well, I'll use I was going to use a different example. I'll use like not my direct family, but my lineage. You're a white Jewish person. Hello. Hi, I'm a white Jewish person. In Judaism, there is a lot of belief that you are raised and indoctrinated in, whether or not you're super religious or not, around Israel being your home. You grow up, like I grew up, I wasn't super religious. I didn't get bat mitzvah until I was older, and I chose to do that. So it wasn't like we did Shabbat and we were kosher and all these things. We didn't really go to synagogue all that much. We celebrated holidays and things like that. But you still grow up hearing that Israel is your home, is your safe space, that will always be available to you because the rest of the world hates Jewish people. And that's like a very comforting piece to grow up and know. And then all the stuff was happening with Israel and Palestine and Gaza, and people started to turn their attention to like the true history of what happened in Israel, because they have like a lot of propaganda around changing the narrative. And it was very polarizing. It could be like a polarizing piece with family members, that, you know, an older family member might have really grown up with that belief, especially if they went to synagogue regularly, and they might be like, no, I'm always going to be pro-Israel. I need to support Zionism because like I want to feel like there is a home for me that always exists, in a safe space for me, because that's what they were brought up hearing. And then you might be like, you meaning me, might be like, actually, I don't think what they're doing over there is correct. I think that they're that they're doing a genocide, and they are not acknowledging the indigeneity of the other people that live there. And what they're doing is completely wrong. So this might be like a generational belief or cycle that's not necessarily like family lineage healing, but it can cause an issue with family members. And it can be a piece where, especially if you're very strong in your morals and convictions, and you want to, like, you've heard, you know, like through the BLM movements, I heard from, like, when I was listening to a lot of Black and people of color creating content talking about, like, if you're white, your job is to speak to your community, to call in your family members and your friends, because they're going to listen to you and they're going to trust you because they already know you. It can be like one of those types of pieces where you're like, I'm trying to do my best, and I'm trying to to speak on behalf of other people and create change and acknowledge things that I feel are completely immoral and maybe even evil. And your family member might be like, I don't agree with you at all, right? Like it could be religion. Like you could be like, I practice tarot and I light spell candles and I talk to my spirit guides. And your family member might be like, that's the devil. Because they're raised with like Christianity or Catholicism or literally any monotheistic religion kind of sees that kind of stuff as evil. And except for Judaism, but modernly it's seen as bad. But Jewish mysticism is where we get a lot of our magic principles from, but we don't modernly, like a lot of rabbis don't modernly support it. So, yeah, so there can be like those types of medium pieces where you're like, I think we can avoid talking about this topic. Like that might be your boundary. That might be what you need is you're like, what I need is to just not have this stress in my life. And I don't want to talk about this at all with this person. And maybe I just need to tell them like, I don't think we're ever going to see eye to eye on this. And that might be okay for me. Like maybe if they feel like, tarot is evil, you might be like, cool, I don't need you to believe the same thing that I believe, and you're not necessarily like hindering me or hurting me. You're just saying like, I don't like that you do it. Then you might be like, okay, cool. Like, let's just agree to disagree and we'll leave that there. But if they're a family member that's like, hey, like, you shouldn't be doing this, you're going to hell, like, I don't want that in my house, or maybe you live with them or whatever it is, or they bring it up every time and they shame you for it, then what do you need? Maybe I need a stronger boundary here, and I want this family member to know that I'm going to continue to live my life and I don't need their like judgment from me. Or maybe I want to show them that it is safe. And that they don't need to be scared of this and it's not evil, right? Like or maybe you're like, you know what? I feel like they're rejecting who I am and they're not accepting me. And this is a big part of who I am in my lifestyle. And I've made it very clear to them that it's very important. And it was a big part of my healing journey or whatever it is. And you're like, and they still don't want to receive or be open to it. And they're not showing like they're going to be open to any part of this process, then you might have to have a stronger boundary, right? So it's really about thinking about the context and where we're at and what we need and what is most important to us so that we can try and navigate towards that outcome that we're hoping. And it's also about being open, because sometimes we can get too stubborn where we're like, I just need you to understand that tarot is not evil. When we look at that person's history, maybe the religious trauma that they have for maybe they're like 60 or 70 now, and you're like, I don't know if they'll ever like unlearn that. That's maybe not something that's a priority for them in their life. And they've had so much conditioning around it and so much fear, because a lot of these things use fear, like religion, to control people. And they're fearing that I'm going to go to hell because I'm doing something that they were brought up and raised with as evil, right? So it's like really understanding like what are their limitations and thinking like, okay, with that limitation that I don't think that they're ever going to change their mind, what would I need from them? Maybe just a little bit more acceptance, or maybe for them to agree that they're not going to shame me for it, or that they can let me live my own path and have my own beliefs and not bring it up. And not worry about it too much, right? Like thinking about what that is and thinking about like what are giving the other person, like how I was saying, not to get too stuck on it, because then if we're like, okay, I just really want to convince them that tarot is not evil, so I'm going to take them to a tarot class, right? Like maybe you bring that conversation to the table and they're like, absolutely not. I'm not open to that at all. I don't think that's something I ever want to do. That stuff is evil. I don't even want to go near it, right? And you get locked in and you're like, this is the only way that I can break this cycle is if I like take them to a tarot class. This is the only way. Like sometimes in our brain, we're just like, this is the way, right? So in that, now you've created another boundary where you're like, no, I won't be talking to you until you agree to go to this tarot class with me. And like, and this is not from my personal experience, so I'm making it up. It's stuff I've heard from clients. And like, I'm mad at you and I don't reach out to me until you're open and ready to go to this tarot class. Because what we're doing when we're getting locked in like that is we're saying there's only one way for healing. And like I said, there's so many different ways to find healing. And with the ego being triggered and we're forcing them to change, belief is the hardest thing to change in people. We need to be a little more graceful and say, okay, if they're really not open to taking a tarot class, what else could be done? So then we create space for negotiation. What do you need? What do you want? What's going on for you? Because if we can understand, if the person is able to communicate their side, then we can understand a little bit more and come to the middle and have healing and have resolution. Because probably that mother might be like, well, look, I just care so much about you and I don't want you to go to hell. I don't want my child to be separated from me and I never get to see them again, based on their beliefs, right? And you might be like, I understand that and I love you and I don't want to be separated from you either and I don't want to go to hell either, but I truly, strongly feel like that is not what's going to happen for me for doing tarot. Like, then you're breaking down the barrier, you're breaking down the tension of like my side, no, my belief, and you're coming to understand each other. Because once we have understanding, it can be so much easier to like move through these pieces and be like, look, my mom is just being so stubborn about this and so weird about this and annoying about this because she loves me. She's coming from a place of love. Wow, okay, maybe it's not that crazy, right? And then you can communicate. What do you need? Like, would you be open to watching a YouTube video of someone doing tarot and looking at our, horoscopes or whatever? What if I tell you about a story where the tarot helped me and it connected me to my angels more? There's different nuances that can happen when we're having understanding and when we're willing to bring what we need to the table and create space for them if they're like not as willing to get on board with what we're doing. Hi. So I actually went on for 2 whole hours, more than 2 hours talking about this. So I decided to split this into 2 separate episodes. This is where we're ending. Next week, we'll get into the deeper, heavier stuff with family members and cycle breaking. And I hope that this part 1 has helped you in some way, shape, or form, and that the next part gives you that same healing or peace or understanding or knowledge that you are looking for. And yeah, I will see you all next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to your intuition and listening to the Empowered Intuitive podcast. I would absolutely love it if you could leave a review on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts, subscribe or follow the pod wherever you stream, and legit just tell all your spiritual baddie friends and fam about us. You can follow the Empowered Intuitive Pod on IG at the Empowered Intuitive Pod. For updates and fun memes, follow our host Love on IG and TikTok at Love Sakratoff. That's LOVESACHARTOFF. Or head to their website to subscribe to their newsletter, book a session, or attend an upcoming event with them at lovesakratoff.com. And remember, trust your intuition.